Hey y'all, my name is Kayla and welcome to my cozy chaotic corner of the internet. So in today's video, we are going to be answering the question, can you really judge a book based on its cover? And today's episode, we are delving into Murder Road by Simone St. James. And I hate to break it to you, but I absolutely cannot stand this cover. For me, personally, I am not a fan of cartoony covers. There's something about them that's very juvenile, and I feel like sometimes they should just belong on comic books, in my personal opinion. Obviously, we all have our own different taste when it comes to aesthetics, when it comes to what books we deem aesthetically pleasing or questionable in taste. But for me personally, this is just a cover I cannot get along with. With that noted, this is not the original cover of Murder Road. This is the Evernight edition of the cover. And I will note that I'm not a fan of the original cover anyways. Like, neither of the covers do I personally really like. Again, that is all personal bias. You may absolutely love and adore this cover. In fact, I will note my sister is obsessed with this cover. And I told her once I read the book, if I don't like the book, it is all hers. It will find its way to her doorstep. With that noted, I did want to give Murder Road a fair chance. I have read Simone St. James in the past, and the book I read of hers was the Book of Cold Cases. I actually really enjoyed that book up until like the plot twist, and then I wasn't really a fan. So I'm intrigued to see what Murder Road has to offer. Will I absolutely love it? Will I absolutely hate it? We'll just have to wait and find out. So one of the major roles behind this little series of Can You Judge a Book by Its Cover is I am solely picking books based on their cover, whether I love them or whether I think they're questionable in taste. I don't read the synopsis. I know nothing about the books. I just judge the book based on its cover. So for Murder Road, I want to kind of delve into what I think the book's going to be about based on the cover alone. So the Evernight edition of the cover does have kind of a front and back detailing. So we got this going on. My assumption about this book is that it is going to be about, well, clearly there's a couple involved and there's a car, and for some reason the car, the way it's like angled at these two people, I'm getting the vibes of like maybe a possessed car, just because I know that Simone St. James incorporates paranormal activities into, at least into the book I read of hers in the past. There are some paranormal experiences occurring. So I'm almost feeling like this is either a possessed car or it's a ghostly driver. It's a lone road. This is the vibes I'm getting from this book. Also, there is this woman on the back and her eyes are glowing. I don't know if you guys can see that. Maybe she's the one who drives the car. Maybe she's like, she finds her targets and then the car goes after them. With that noted, let's delve into Murder Road and see what it is all about. I don't know if it's this narrator or if this character is just so whiny. Oh my god, 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 oh my god. It is so infuriating. Like, what year is this book taking place? What? I need to know. July. It's in July. July of 1995. 1995. Desert Storm going on back then? I need to do some research. Desert Storm. No? Well, hold on. So he's like, I an army vet, so it probably was Desert Storm. Okay, okay. Still, it's frustrating. Two stars. See you later, bye! No, I'm just kidding. Let's actually talk about The Murder Road. As always, I never actually read the synopses of the book. And I also, this may be like the silliest thing ever, but I also try to not read the synopses of the book even while I'm actively reading it. I think I probably got 70% of the way through before I like skimmed the synopsis, but let's just read the synopsis together right here, right now. So the synopsis of Murder Road by Simone St. James is: April and Eddie have taken a wrong turn, and now they're on a long, dark road late at night when they see a woman up ahead, clearly in trouble. They stop and pick her up. It's only once she's in the car that they see the blood, and then headlights appear in the distance, racing towards them at speed, and at long last the woman speaks,
"I'm sorry. He's coming."
While April and Eddie are able to escape this time, their terrifying adventure is only just the beginning. The hitchhiker's injuries prove fatal, and the couple are trapped in a small town of Cold Lake Falls, prime suspects in the eyes of the local police. It turns out that this isn't the first victim to die in this stretch of road, and it isn't the first time that survivors have seen something that they can't explain. But to get out of town, April and Eddie are going to have to drive down that haunted stretch of road one more time. I pretty much already knew that this was gonna have some paranormal, spooky ghost stuff in it because I was just basing that on my experience with the Book of Cold Cases by Simone St. James. I was like, okay, this chick does spooky paranormal ghost stuff mixed with like murder mystery. But I did take notes throughout the book. They're mostly nonsensical, but let's just flip through these cards because I knew I wasn't going to be keeping this book. Ultimately, I just had a hunch. I had a feeling I was not keeping Murder Road. And let's just see what Kayla has to say. So the book starts out with April and Eddie driving down this road, right? Just random stretch of road. We find out it's called Atticus Lane. There's the woman that they pick up, and she's just like walking down the road. The way it's described, it sounds like April and Eddie are in their little Pontiac, slowly creeping up behind her. And I don't know you ladies, if you've ever just been walking down the road and all of a sudden a car is just slowly driving up behind you, it is the it makes me so tense when that happens because so many different possibilities can happen. One time I did literally have a car loop around a block multiple times. Thankfully, I was on a very busy stretch of road, so I felt a little safe in the sense that like there were hundreds of cars passing by me, but that was probably the worst thing that's ever happened to me. But much worse things have happened to other people. And I wrote on this card, if I were that woman, I would hate if someone drove slowly behind me. I also wouldn't look behind me either, because she didn't like look behind her. She was just kind of like walking forward still. And I'm just like, y'all, instead of creepily driving behind her, why don't you just like pull ahead, stop the car, peer out the window and be like, hey, do you need help? Do you need a ride? Don't just like creepily drive. That's like, couldn't stand that. Let's get rid of that note card. April and Eddie just got married. They're literally about to go on their honeymoon. And the way April speaks about her now new existence with Eddie, I wrote, she doesn't sound excited to live life with Eddie. There's a section where she says, and then we'd make our way home to a small apartment we rented together in Ann Arbor. And Eddie would go back to work fixing cars, and I'd go to my job at the bowling alley. We'd both go to work every day. Then we'd come home and have dinner. That was probably one of 6 kinds of sandwiches. And then we'd go to bed. Repeat every day forever. Why did you marry this man? This whole story is from the narration of Miss April, and she is just a whiny little and I couldn't stand it. And the narrator for the audiobook did her really well because she made her 10 times whinier. The girl they picked up, she's stabbed, she's bleeding. It turns out she just ends up dying. But they were like, as soon as they realized she was bleeding, they took her to the hospital. Like, they went out of their way and took her to the hospital. But when they get to the hospital and the girl, Rhonda Jean, is brought into the hospital, put on the stretcher, I wrote, how did y'all come to this conclusion? And I wrote that because it stated, Eddie and I looked like murderers. Because you had a stabbed girl and you took her to the hospital? Am I just delusional? Or apparently I'm just delusional because I'm delusional. One of the things that I haven't pointed out yet, and they won't point out for a very long time, is that when they picked up Rhonda Jean, they got her in the car, they were kind of driving, and out of nowhere, a truck appears and starts chasing them down the road. And they decided they weren't gonna tell the cops that a truck was chasing down the road because in the bed of the truck, there was a woman. Here's the thing. Eddie is an Army veteran. He served in Desert Storm, summer of 1995 in this book. I forgot the 1995 factor for the longest time, so when I heard Army veteran and he served in Iraq, I was thinking early 2000s OEF, OIF situation with Iraq. And I'm just sitting there the whole time being so frustrated about his PTSD, because he has PTSD. That's why he was like, did I actually see what I saw? Is my PTSD kicking in? The entire time I was thinking from the headspace of 2000s Iraq, not early 90s Iraq. I was getting so frustrated at the fact I was like, people know about PTSD. It's a thing. We all know it exists. So that's where my headspace was that entire time. And then about halfway through the book, I was like, what year is this? And then I looked and I saw that it was the year of 1995. And I was like, that makes sense. Okay, he was in Desert Storm. While, yes, there was mental health stuff going on, it wasn't as widely known as it is currently. That part was frustrating from like a current day lens. Looking at it from a 90s lens, I understood a little better why he was so hesitant to be like, I see things, because they were just starting to get into discovering what PTSD is. So I was just really frustrated that they had come to the conclusion that like, we're not going to tell the detectives about this truck that was chasing us. I was like, you can still tell the detectives about the truck that was chasing you without mentioning the fact that there was a woman in the bed of the truck. But they were determined not to tell the detectives about the truck. Because they are now like murder suspects, apparently, they bring them to a bed and breakfast, and Rose is the owner of said bed and breakfast. Our first introduction to Rose, I didn't really like her. She was just kind of like going off on a tangent about nothing, and I was like, why are we bickering? It's ridiculous. Anyways, and then April goes in this line, if we hadn't picked up Rhonda Jean, if we'd continued on, we'd be at Five Pines right now, drifting off after our first round of official honeymoon sex. And by the way, this entire book, April continues to remind us that they just got married, that they're supposed to be on their honeymoon. And it's like, yes, we get it. Her internal monologue, April keeps referring to how like she's different. She's a different kind of girl. No one would understand her. And trust and believe, once we find out her story, I'm just like, I keep trying to put my mindset in the mindset of someone from the 90s. Because I'm like, maybe all of this stuff would make way more sense from like a 90s perspective. But even so, I can't put myself in that headspace. I'm just like, I don't get why we're all being like, I'm not like other girls, I'm deep, I'm dark, I'm mysterious. April is literally described numerous times as like pretty much being a drop dead gorgeous blonde bombshell. So yeah, sure, April, you're different. Oh, this is when we discover that it's more than just Rhonda Jean that has died on Atticus Lane. There have been multiple people. That's when I made note. I'm like, just tell them about the freaking truck, especially if there are more than one death. I just noted that she keeps talking about how they should be on their honeymoon right now. And I wrote, we get it. You're a newlywed and you're supposed to be on your honeymoon. And let me just tell you, this is at page 40. So if I'm already annoyed by page 40, just trust and believe that pretty much every other page, she keeps reminding us that they should be on their honeymoon. And then, why does it sound like April is questioning Eddie as if he magically stabbed her while they were driving? Yeah, and so the entire time, April had like this internal dialogue of she keeps questioning why they did end up on Atticus Line. Like, why did we end up here? Why didn't he just refer to the map? First and foremost, he's a man. And not only is he he's a man from the 90s. Like, there's that trope of like men never read instructions. They never read maps. They don't ask for directions. So just like, it's a stereotype for a reason. So I'm assuming Eddie falls into that stereotype. Let's just go with that. But yeah, this is why I was like, does April even like Eddie? Because she keeps kind of like posing him in not the greatest of lights. On page 68, I decided I actually like this Rose lady a lot. And Rose was quite honestly the best thing about this book. And I'll tell you why more towards the end. Next, we have, it annoys me that April always makes everything about her, because she really does. This entire time she's like, Rhonda Jean, this poor woman died on the side of the road, and then there's the lost girl who's the ghost urban legend, and just like the entire time, again, she keeps saying she just got married, she's supposed to be on her honeymoon. I understand what's going on, but people wouldn't understand why I understand what's going on. Everything is about April. Everything. Not once does she really think about anyone else who is impacted by these series of events. Oh, okay, so this is when we learn about the urban legend of the lost girl. So by the way, we meet these two teenage girls who are like obsessed with murders, because this was also around the time of the OJ trial. So our first murder mystery girlies. So Gretchen is one of the girls, and she says, if you see her, you'll be the next one found at the side of the road. If you see the lost girl, you're next. So I wrote down, Eddie saw her. Is he next? Will he die? The good guy always dies. I wonder why Eddie is with April, to be quite frank, because he actually seems like a really nice, decent human being, and April is just like so full of herself. I wrote, good. Start your marriage on a lie. What happens when your mom magically appears? So this is when we find out that we start to learn about April's checkered past and what makes her so different from other girls. April and her mom ran away from their abusive father. One day my mom just magically, like, it was just me and my mom my whole life, and then one day she just disappeared. But she's told Eddie that her mom died. She didn't say that she like kind of just like left town. She's like, my mom died. Yeah, okay, so this part is when Eddie and April are like trying to leave town. Like the detectives are finally like, you guys can leave town. Shoo shoo, goodbye. This is kind of the part of the book where I rolled my eyes. And I started, I've been rolling my eyes the whole time, but this is when my eyes were permanently rolled in the back of my head. I wrote, yes, it makes so much sense to shout at the ghost girl. So when they were trying to leave town, they took Atticus Line. Why they took Atticus Line? I don't know. We'll take another road. I'm sure there's other roads you can take, but they decided to take the ghost girl road. So the lost girl decides she's gonna start chasing them down. Chasing him down, reaching into the window, trying to pull Eddie out, saying, please help me. And Eddie's like screaming, hey there, hey, what do you want? What's your name? Who are you? Oh, I got ahead of myself. They were trying to find the truck that the ghost girl was in, and they found the truck. They saw the ghost girl at the truck. That's when Eddie's yelling at him. Okay, this is when I started to get really annoyed. Page 115. I was getting really annoyed about them talking about Eddie's PTSD, and I wrote, what is the year? We all know that vets suffer PTSD. Why do they care that people know Eddie sees things? And that was the point where I was like so annoyed and frustrated. I think probably 5 pages later, I decided to figure out what year we are in, and that's when I discovered Eddie had served in Operation Desert Storm in the early 90s. Okay, now we are in a section, and I wrote, stop trying to make everyone the bad guy, April. Her just monologue, she was just the worst narrator ever. I don't know why I wrote that. Oh, okay, so this is the part where they're driving down Atticus Line trying to leave town, and the ghost girl, or the lost girl, starts chasing them, and I wrote, what if she's actually real? That's the one thing I don't like about Simone St. James's ghosts, is that the ghosts are so very, very real. Like, they seem like corporeal beings until they just magically disappear. Like, there's nothing ethereal about them. There's nothing about them where I'm like, oh yes, this is a ghost. They're always written like actual physical human beings. that just have the ability to in thin air. I was just like, what if? Just in theory, you guys are running away from her, treating her like she's an actual ghost, but what if it is a legit physical human being that is walking on the side of the road that actually needs your help? But she is a ghost, so it doesn't need that. That tangent didn't even matter, Kayla. I wrote, are they going to solve her murder? Because we're pretty much at a point where they're like, guess we aren't leaving, guess we're gonna solve this murder. And April's monologue about this, she's just like, yeah, we really got to figure out what happened to this poor girl. It's our duty. This is the point in the book. Right here, where my eyes were permanently rolled into the back of my head. And I kind of just stopped caring, and I just kind of listened to the story, and I was like, I think also the reason I stopped getting so frustrated was because I was over the fact that April is very full of herself. It started to get into almost a mystery true crime space, and I was like, okay, I can dig with that. I like mystery true crime stuff, so let's see what Simone St. James has to offer. Because that's what I actually really liked about the Book of Cold Cases, was the first half was very much like murder, mystery, crime solving stuff. Yeah, between 159 and 241, I had nothing to note. Okay, so now we get to the part where the detectives have been doing their detective jobs and they've discovered the shtick behind Miss April. And before I tell you Miss April's story, I knew her lies were going to bite her in the butt. So pretty much they've been staying at Rose's. The detectives, cops show up and they're just like, hey, the jig is up. We know what's going on. And they pretty much spill the entire beans on both Eddie and April's past in front of Eddie, April, and Miss Rose. And April's checkered past is this. When she was a young warthog. When I was a young warthog. April's dad was very, 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 very abusive. So her mom was just sick and tired of it. But instead of, retaliating during an attack, she plotted and schemed to just kill her husband. So one night she beats the bejesus out of his dome piece. And then once he is good and dead, she wakes up little Miss April. She's like, hey, sweetie, honey, we gotta go. We gotta get out of here. I'm just sick and tired of your father, and we just gotta run and run and run till he can no longer find us. Before she snatched up April, she decided to light the house on fire. So, house gone. Father dead. But her and April are now on the run. They do ultimately change their names. April's name is not April, it's Crystal. Before they change their names, Mom does get the life insurance money from Dad's death. And now they're on the run. Names have been changed. To our knowledge, they've only been changed once. So we don't know why April keeps talking like she's the super secret detective con man dude. Mom kind of lives a checkered life to get money. Her mom did end up going to jail because they discovered that the father didn't just die in a fire. Oh, and a fun fact that I haven't told y'all yet. So Eddie's mom, his actual factual mom, was in his life until he was like about 8, but she kind of was a neglectful mother because she had drug and alcohol problems. It got to the point where she just couldn't take care of him anymore. He was put into the system, and his parents that he has currently, who sound absolutely wonderful human beings, are not his biological parents. So that is a fact that you need to know. Okay, so this is when we discovered that the ghost girl is not just this sweet, innocent little ghost girl, but that she is in fact controlling the killers. So every single time someone has died, it has been a different killer that's been controlled by the lost girl. Oh, and fun fact that you don't know yet, because I haven't told you, but you would know if you were reading the book. The lost girl is Shannon. And guess who Shannon is? I'll tell you in a little bit. This is where we get to the point of April is continuing to question Eddie and why they ended up where they ended up. And I wrote, April fell asleep in the car because she was sleeping in the car. That's why she didn't really know how they ended up on Atticus Line. And then I wrote, did Eddie kill the girl in the beginning? If he did, don't tell him. So, because the whole reason we discover that the lost girl is controlling the killers is because April had this smart little idea. After Eddie found out about April's checkered past and that she had been lying to him, he was like, I'm gonna go on a run, because he goes on runs to clear his head, because he's just that type of army vet. April decides, I'm gonna drive out to Atticus Line. And while she's on Atticus Line, she's like, I'm gonna walk on Atticus Line to see if I can like trigger this series of events, find the murderer. So she's like, oh, hey, hi, car, can you take me somewhere? And the car is this lovely lady. Her name is Trish. And Trish is just like being pretty normal, just taking, you know, April to wherever, I can't remember, the beach, hidden beach. They're just kind of chit-chatting it up. It is nighttime. Most of this book takes place in the night. And then all of a sudden, like, something in Miss Trish changes. She changes all of a sudden. She's a very different person. And this is when you discover that the lost girl is controlling Trish. And Trish tries killing Miss April. Don't worry, Trish is fine. April's fine. The ghost girl did not do her ghosty things tonight. But that's when I came up with a theory. I was like, wait, maybe Eddie was being controlled by the ghost girl. And that's why he can't really remember how they actually got to Atticus Line. That was my theory at this point in the book. We're almost at the end though. I wrote, the dad killed her. So we go on this whole adventure of trying to figure out more about Shannon's life and like what they can do to take care of this ghost problem. And they came with this theory that, well, if we find her actual murderer and like we get justice on her murderer, maybe all this will stop. And it does stop, fun fact. But during all this, they go to her hometown, they go to her home house. The father is still well alive and all that good stuff. And they break into his house, take some stuff. And that's where they find a camera with film in it still. And they're like, yes, it's been 20 years since this woman died, but it has to be that this camera is the camera that she has. So they go and they get the film developed. There's 4 pictures on that roll of film. One of them's just a blurry hot mess. One's just a cute little picture of her and a friend. One's a picture of just herself, like standing in front of her childhood home. And then the final picture is her at Hidden Lake, which is the place she had gone to kind of like run away from everything. And that is around the same time that she would have died. So if she had all of her stuff with her and she was killed, how is this camera that she had when she was killed magically at her father's place? Great question. She calls up her dad and she's like, hey dad, I'm ready to come home. Can you help me out? I need some money. Can you just like come pick me up? So he like drives there, picks her up. Hey honey, how you doing? And she's like, F you dad, I changed my mind. I'm doing things on my own. And he's like, get in the car, Shannon, right this second. She's like, no, I hate you. And then in this whole ordeal, he's like, it was an accident. It was an accident. Y'all, if I remember correctly, Shannon had been bludgeoned in the head. Bludgeoned. Bludgeoned is not like, oh, and she's done. Bludgeoned is the pat, 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 pat. It was an accident, my asshole. Anyways, so he takes her stuff and he leaves. And my thing is, I think the reason she's haunting isn't because like she was killed by her father. My idea is the reason she's haunting, because everyone's like, well, why is she like, she was such a sweet, nice girl. Why did she start haunting people? And it was because she was left there. Her father didn't take her body. He just killed her and left her on the side of the road where she was left to decompose and wasn't found for at least a month after she had died. That's why she became a ghost that haunted people and was a serial killer. Oh, okay. So there's this plot development where, so we find out that Shannon's dad had brain cancer because he confronts Eddie and April and they're in this little shoot off. And he ends up shooting Eddie in the arm, which completely tears his arm apart. When they were in their little shoot off, one of the police officers, Cal Syed, who's kind of been like friendly to them this whole time, the detectives have been total a-holes. But Cal, who's just like a beat cop, has been really nice to them and trying to help them out. He shows up just in the nick of time. And he's like, hey, stop. What are you doing? I said stop. Put your guns down. As soon as old grandpa shoots Eddie in the arm, because remember, Shannon's dad is Eddie's grandpa, Cal takes out the old man. So during the autopsy of the old man, they find out that he had a very special form of cancer in his brain that is the reason why he killed Shannon that night. But then we also discover that the boy who killed Rhonda Jean, because they did find the murderer of Rhonda Jean, who again, the murderer was being controlled by the Lost Girl, he also had a special form of cancer in his head. So my theory was like, okay, if we are under the assumption that Eddie was in fact being controlled by his mom, the Lost Girl, to drive down Atticus' line, does he have brain cancer? Oh, one last note card. Back to Rose and why Rose is my favorite person in the entire book. I wrote, this is the only good part of this book. Hashtag justice for Robbie and Rose. So Rose had a husband. His name was Robbie. He was a black police officer. Really great police officer. And she knew that the only reason he had never become a detective was the fact that he was black. In this last little section, I think it's like the second to last chapter, April and Rose are having a heart-to-heart. Rose is just like, talking about Robbie and how her place is haunted by Robbie, but he's like a good spirit. And she's like, yeah, I see him all the time and I can't wait for the day that I can be back with him. And I may or may not have like cried during that part, but that was literally the only point in the book where I've like had kind, sympathetic, heartwarming feelings, warm fuzzies. I had warm fuzzies during that part of the book. Pretty much anytime Rose was talking about Robbie, I had like little warm fuzzies in my soul. Rose and Robbie are the only reason this book is not a 1-star for me. So, can you really judge a book by its cover? First and foremost, I hate the Evernight edition of this book cover. That's my personal opinion. We are all allowed our own personal opinions. I also am not the biggest fan of the actual cover of Murder Road. It's not like the worst cover, but it's not like a cover that I would just be like, ooh, yes, I want to read this. So I think that's also worth noting. My personal opinions about this cover match up perfectly with my personal opinions about the contents of the book.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
In our next episode of Can You Judge a Book by Its Cover, we're going to be delving into The Adversary by Michael Crummy. And I will see y'all in the next one.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
Bye!